Stella and I grew up together, but we were never close. While I was studying abroad these past few years, our parents went and arranged our engagement behind my back. The second I heard, I booked a flight back to the States to call the whole thing off. I rushed to Stella's office and saw the clean-cut kid she had in tow, and I breathed a sigh of relief. "I knew you weren't into me either," I said. "How about we just tell our families and cancel this thing?" Stella froze, gritting her teeth so hard I thought they'd crack. "Who did you say I'm not into?" On the flight home, I blew up my dad's phone. "Seriously? You set up my engagement while I'm gone? Why didn't you just get me married while you were at it? Stella this, Stella that. Why don't you just adopt her and I'll go live on the streets? Who told you we were secretly dating? We barely say 2 words to each other when we see each other. Okay? I said I wanted to marry her when I was a kid. That was because I was a kid and I thought she was pretty. We don't even have each other's numbers. Why don't you believe me?" After trying repeatedly, I realized it was useless. My dad was as stubborn as a mule, insisting I'd been dating Stella behind his back, dumped her, and then fled the country. I talked until my throat was dry, and in the end, he just hung up on me. I didn't even get a chance to tell him I was back in the country. Luckily, I got a hold of my old crew for an emergency consult. When they heard I was looking for Stella, they all gave me a hard time for a while, but eventually, Ace sent me the address of her company. At the end of the call, Ace hesitated. "Hey, I heard there's some guy hanging around Stella." I was dragging my suitcase along while grabbing a quick bite from a food truck. Having not eaten any real home-style food in ages, I was in heaven. "Yeah, so? Just make sure you guys talk it out. Don't let a third wheel ruin your relationship." Ace rushed the sentence out and then hung up before I could respond, leaving me standing there dumbfounded, mid-bite. Seriously? There's nothing between us. If our families weren't so close, I wouldn't even admit we grew up together. I found Stella's company. Ace had told me that Stella was always good to the guys we grew up with. Usually, you could just give your name at the front desk and they'd let you up. So, I walked up to the reception desk without a second thought and said, "Hi, I'm here to see your CEO, Stella White."
I'm Martin Sterling.
The receptionist looked me up and down, ignored me, and turned back to her coworker. "Did you hear Ms. White's family set her up with a fiancé? Supposedly he's a spoiled, good-for-nothing brat. There's no way she'd be into a pretty boy like that." I patiently asked again, "I'm looking for Stella White. Can you tell me where her office is?" Another shameless freeloader using someone else's name to get in? You really think we haven't seen pictures of Martin Sterling? Exactly. They're all just trying to latch onto Stella White. I suddenly let out a laugh, crossed my arms, and stood right in front of them, listening intently. If you ask me, James is the one for her. Every time I see him with Ms. White, it's just so easy on the eyes. Totally. I think James and Ms. White are the perfect couple. I'm their #1 shipper. James? I'd never heard of anyone like that around Stella before. The gossiping coworker saw me out of the corner of her eye, leaned in, and lowered her voice. James was her junior in college. I heard they had a connection back then, and now Ms. White brought him on as an intern, breaking company policy. Anyone can see she treats him differently. I just wonder what kind of stunt her fiancé is going to pull. No one even knows where he is, but he had his family lock down the engagement to trap her. The guy's got some serious nerve. I nodded. The rumors were surprisingly detailed. "I'm right here." I walked over and tapped the woman who had just been talking. She jumped. "Who are you?" I tilted my head and smiled at her. "Her fiancé." "What fiancé? Does Stella White have another one?" Looking at their shocked and confused faces, I continued, "So, can you tell me where Stella White is now?" After a whole ordeal proving I was, in fact, me, the young receptionist from before led me to the executive elevator. The whole way up, she was practically stumbling, barely able to stand straight. We got to the door of the CEO's office. She knocked for me, then bolted like her life depended on it. Seriously, as if I'd hold a grudge. So petty. Actually, I'm pretty petty myself. But I had more important things to do. Seeing the door was unlocked, I pushed it open. The first thing I saw was a guy in a white shirt standing in front of Stella. As I walked in, his long fingers were just about to touch the silk scarf at her collar. Our eyes met. He froze. At the same time, the woman beside him turned around. Her eyes flickered with surprise. Who are you? How did you get into Stella's office? What is security even? James's voice cut off abruptly, because Stella was already walking toward me with long strides. She wasn't listening to him at all. Just as she reached me, she suddenly opened her arms. I thought she was going to hug me, but a second later, her raised hands dropped abruptly, and she grabbed my hand like it was a hot potato. Her eyes were a little red, her voice trembling slightly. Why are you back? I'd been abroad for 3 years. 3 years ago, Stella hadn't taken over this company yet. In my memory, she had always been the campus queen, a head-turner with flawless looks. Now she was more mature, her features refined. All the youthful innocence was gone, replaced by a clarity and beauty in her eyes that was even more striking. I was mesmerized for a full 3 seconds before snapping out of it and quickly answering, "Didn't the people downstairs tell you? I came to see you." Stella's voice was low. "More than one person has come here claiming to be you over the past 3 years. I thought, hearing that, I was instantly furious. Someone's been impersonating me. The nerve. Then you should have just told them to stop letting anyone named Martin Sterling in." Stella's gaze never left me. It was making me a little self-conscious. "You must be Martin. I'm James, an intern here at Stella's company." A gentle, clear voice spoke up from the side, drawing my attention. I finally got a good look at James. He was just as they described, handsome and clean-cut, the classic pretty boy. He had the fresh-faced energy of a recent college grad. Definitely the type women would fall for.
Hey, I'm Martin Sterling.
Seeing the annoyance on his face at being interrupted, I asked apologetically, "Did I interrupt something? I forgot to knock." Stella rushed to explain, "You didn't interrupt anything. There's nothing between James and me. We have a meeting soon," and he noticed my scarf was crooked. He was just about to fix it for me, but I moved away. Even if you hadn't shown up, nothing would have happened between us. Stella's voice grew quieter and quieter, making her sound almost wronged. I pursed my lips, thinking, so what's the deal with them? As I was pondering, I heard Stella's tone turn sharp as she ordered, "James, you can go now, and cancel my next meeting."
James sounded urgent.
"Stella, but this meeting..." Meeting Stella's gaze, James shut his mouth. He shot me a resentful look and practically spat the word out through his teeth. Fine. After James left, I sat down in Stella's office chair. I'd sat in my dad's chair before. This one was way more comfortable. Stella stood nearby, watching me. "You just got back. Have you been home yet?" I looked up at her beautiful face and swallowed, my resolve weakening. "Not yet. I came here to..." "Oh right, these are for you." As if remembering something, Stella cut me off. She naturally took my hand and led me to a cabinet in the lounge area of her office. She opened it to reveal a collection of the latest watches and cufflinks, each one worth a fortune. "I got these for you. Over the last 3 years, whenever I was at an auction or traveling for work, I'd see something I thought you'd like and buy it. I did like them, but..." "Stella, why are you being so nice to me all of a sudden?" I thought about it and could only come up with one reason. "If this is about the engagement, you really don't have to." "I do," Stella cut me off. I didn't quite hear her. "What? It's necessary to prepare seriously," Stella repeated. "Actually, that's what I came to talk to you about." I laid out the speech I had prepared. "I know you were forced into this engagement by your family too. They always like to make these decisions on their own. How about we both talk to our parents and get them to cancel it?" Stella looked like she'd misheard. "Cancel?" I nodded. "I know you don't like me. Since neither of us is into it, why force it?" Before I could finish, there was a sudden snap. Stella had snapped a valuable fountain pen in her hand. She stiffened, struggling to control her tone. "Who did you say I don't like?" Stella's breathing was ragged, and for some reason, her face was flushed red. It was as if she were searching for something in my face but couldn't find it, and she looked down, disappointed. She pursed her lips, silent. Her reaction wasn't what I'd expected at all. I blinked, keeping my expression neutral. Don't you like James? Stella's head shot up, and she said rapidly, I don't. Huh? So definitive? Her expression was grim, as if she were mad at someone. Who's been spreading that rumor to you? Remembering the scene downstairs, I didn't hesitate. The people who just brought me up. Stella looked down, frowned, and sent a voice message. Tell them they don't need to come in tomorrow. So this is what it feels like to tattle. Pretty satisfying. But if Stella didn't like James, how was I going to get out of this engagement? I reluctantly put the watch she had pressed into my hand back in its place. Even if it's not James, you'll find someone you like eventually. By then, we'll be engaged and it'll just be more complicated. I won't. I was shocked. Are you telling me you're going to waste your whole life on me? Stella nodded. Yeah. It took me a long time to process what she had just said. A shadow fell over Stella's clear, beautiful eyes. There was an indescribable loneliness about her, like she'd just been heartbroken. In a way, she had been. She bit her lip, her voice hoarse. If you really don't want to be engaged to me, we can cancel it. Stella, I felt like anything I said now would be wrong. I was finally starting to understand why my dad said I was acting like some guy who leads a girl on and then dumps her. If you like me, why didn't you say so? Were you trying to be mysterious or something? We'd barely spoken before I went abroad, let alone during the 3 years I was gone with zero contact. The room was suddenly filled with an awkward silence. Stella, the partners are here. James knocked on the door and, seeing no response, came in on his own with a stack of files. I let out a breath of relief and said quickly, since you guys have stuff to do, I'll get out of your hair. Martin. As I pulled the office door open, Stella called out to me. I looked back, pretending nothing had happened. Yeah. What's up? Let's have dinner tonight, Stella added. Our families will probably arrange it since you're back. I nodded. Okay. With that, I bolted downstairs, making a clean getaway. A pink Lamborghini was parked at the company entrance, ostentatious, just like its owner, who was standing right in the middle of the entrance in a loud pink suit, waving at me with sunglasses on despite the lack of sun. Martin, over here. He saw me and waved me over. I covered my face with my hand and quickly dove into his car. Seriously, sometimes I wish he'd just pretend he didn't know me. Ace stomped on the gas. So, you saw Stella. Did you feel your heart skip a beat? As he spoke, he put on a song called Reunited After a Long Time. The vibe was too weird. I immediately hit pause. I sighed. My heart didn't skip a beat. It nearly stopped. Ace covered his mouth dramatically. I had no idea Stella was that captivating. I was so annoyed I wanted to smack him. When I found out my parents arranged my engagement behind my back, I nearly had a heart attack. I never would have thought that a cliché plot from a cheesy romance novel, an arranged marriage, would actually happen to me. Ace just scoffed. TSK, keep pretending. Since when have you, Martin Sterling, ever been scared of anything? But for real, did Stella agree to call it off? I shook my head again, exasperated. Nope. Ace wasn't surprised. I knew it. There's no way Stella would ever agree to break off the engagement with you. Did she get super mad when she heard you wanted to cancel? And then confess her feelings for you? My temples throbbed. I looked up at him, my face a perfect picture of confusion. Huh? How did Ace know? Ace teased, don't look at me like that. Anyone with eyes can see she's into you. You're the only one who's clueless. I looked out the window. You guys are just making stuff up. You just love to stir up drama. Ace clicked his tongue. You really don't like Stella? She's insanely beautiful, and you're a total sucker for a pretty face. You're telling me you're not moved? Thinking about the face I had just seen, I felt inexplicably flustered. Even if I'm always talking about wanting to date a beautiful woman, it can't be Stella. Ace snickered. Oh, so she's special to you, huh? I finally got it. Ace was setting a trap for me. The car stopped at a red light. I lunged at him. I'm gonna kill you. Ace drove me to the club he'd booked. He said he wanted to throw me a big welcome home party. But knowing these guys, I had no idea if it would be big. But I knew for sure they'd grill me for hours. Can't be helped. These rich kids have too much time on their hands. The moment I pushed the door open, Several pairs of mischievous eyes stared me down. The expected comments began. Our boy Martin went to see Stella the second he got back? I heard Stella confess to you. Can you two just skip the engagement and get married already? I sighed and sat down among them. Feeling thirsty, I grabbed a bottle of liquor in front of me and downed it. You guys sure get your news fast. Zach slapped his thigh. She should have confessed ages ago. I can't believe she kept it in for so long. Especially with a face like that, secretly crushing on someone. I know, right? Anytime there was news about Martin, she'd reply in a second, but she'd ignore everything else. And get this, you know when we flew out to see you? She came too. We didn't even know at first. We ran into her on the flight back and had to pry it out of her. That girl is so secretive. She made me promise not to tell you, said it would be a burden on you. I had no idea about any of this. Chris leaned in conspiratorially. So, did you say yes? I poured myself another drink and changed the subject. Weren't we having a welcome home party? I have to go home later tonight. Let's get this started and finished. After all these years, the only game they could ever think of was playing cards. The rules were simple. There were 9 cards. 8 of them formed for matching pairs. The players who drew a pair could ask each other for a gift, while the player with the odd card out had to complete a dare. I really liked the antique porcelain vase Chris had just posted on his feed. The game had just started when my phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. When I answered, a cool female voice came through the line. Where are you? I had it on speaker. Ace and the others instinctively covered their mouths, listening in like a bunch of gossips. At the riverfront bar with Ace and the guys. I thought I'd lost track of time, but a glance at my watch showed it was only 4 p.m. If I remembered correctly, Stella's office let out at 6. The voice on the other end sounded subdued. Okay, I'm coming to get you. I looked at the unfinished game. You really don't have to. I'll be there in 15 minutes. After she hung up, I asked meekly, is 15 minutes enough for one round? I really wanted Chris's porcelain vase. The room erupted in laughter. Let's go. Let's go. Let's play fast so we don't keep Ms. White waiting. When the cards were flipped, as luck would have it, I was the odd one out. It was like they had planned it. They all started hooting and hollering. Martin's the chosen one. It's your welcome home party. You have to be the star. I wanted to cry. My porcelain vase. All right, here are the dare cards. Pick one. I forced a laugh and drew a card. French kiss someone in the room for 1 minute. Who came up with such a messed up dare? We all grew up together. You want me to pick one of you to kiss? How could I possibly do that? They didn't seem to see the problem. It doesn't have to be a girl. A guy works too. My eyes scanned over Ace and Chris. They shook their heads frantically. Just then, the door to the private room was pushed open from the outside. With a creak, the noise in the room died down. In the doorway stood a cool, elegant figure. Ace, who had been in peril just moments before, looked like he'd seen a savior. His eyes lit up. Perfect timing. Stella, looking as aloof as ever, walked straight up to me. Is it over? We're done. Before the words were out of my mouth, Chris cut me off. Not yet. It's Martin's turn. I froze, realizing what they were plotting. Ace chimed in, we're not letting him go until he does it. The game's not over. We're all adults here. Can't even handle a little kiss? A French kiss, by the way. Stella didn't react, seemingly waiting for my decision. Under their suggestive gazes, I self-consciously walked over to Stella. Have you been drinking? She asked, looking up at me. A pleasant, fragrant scent wafted from her. It was uniquely Stella's scent. I suddenly felt my face flush. I wasn't sure if it was the stuffy air or the alcohol kicking in. My voice grew quiet without me realizing it. Just a little. Martin, you seemed pretty eager to play this game just a minute ago. Don't be a sore loser. We're adults, just a kiss. Even though Stella and I were engaged, after what happened at her office, I couldn't face her so calmly, let alone kiss her. What was this, some kind of platonic kiss? I shot Ace and the others a look, telling them to shut up. Stella clearly wasn't the type to take a joke or be teased. Are you willing? I heard the woman's voice beside me and froze for half a second. What? Her beautiful voice was like a clear mountain spring. Stella spoke clearly and calmly, to kiss. While my mind was blank and I was staring at her dumbly, she had already stood on her toes and gently cupped my face with one hand. Her thumb rested against the side of my lips. Her lips gently touched her own finger. Perfect fake out. She held the pose for about 5 seconds. When Stella pulled away, her ears were red. Her lips brushed against my cheek, sending a wave of heat through me. Then, she naturally took my hand. I'm taking him with me. I let Stella lead me out the door. Behind me, Ace and the others were roaring with laughter. Did you see that? Martin's like some innocent choir boy in front of Ms. White. Totally. It's only around Stella that Martin seems to pull in his claws. When he's with us, he's a total hellraiser. You know, they're actually a really good match. I heard them and shot a glare back over my shoulder. The drive from the bar to my house was less than 2 miles. Stella ran several red lights. Mr. and Mrs. White called several times, asking why we weren't home yet. By the time we arrived, the dining table was already laden with hot dishes. Wow, it smells amazing. These are all my favorites. I abandoned Stella and sat down at the table, my eyes shining with delight. My dad sat down next to me. Mrs. White knew what you liked and hired a chef just for you. Go wash your hands first. Don't be so rude. There's no need for Martin to be so formal. If you like it, just tell me, and I'll have the chef make it again for you next time. You're the best, Mrs. White. Both families gradually took their seats at the table. They animatedly asked me about my time abroad. I'm a chatterbox. I can talk for over an hour by myself. I even had to tell them about the cat I met downstairs from my apartment. I finally stopped when my throat was completely dry. I looked down and saw my bowl was filled with all my favorite dishes. Who had put them there? By the way, I was just talking to your father the other day. You two aren't getting any younger, and we were thinking that your relationship is pretty solid. I was wondering if Martin had any thoughts about becoming our son-in-law? Mrs. White asked tentatively. I nearly choked on my food. I shot my dad a look, begging him to help me out, but he deliberately avoided my gaze. I was practically jumping out of my seat with anxiety. Mrs. White saw it all. Actually, a few hours ago, Stella told us about your feelings on the matter. I looked in surprise at the woman eating silently beside me. I couldn't believe Stella had already spoken up for me. We won't force you two to be together. After all, Stella has a very reserved personality. It would probably be pretty boring for you to be with her, Martin. Mrs. White always had a soft spot for me. Martin, if you don't like her, just tell me, and we'll call off this engagement. I hesitated. It's not that I don't like her, it's just that these things take time. At least, right now, I didn't know how I felt about Stella. There was a time long ago when I did have a secret crush on her. But that was just a fleeting teenage infatuation. Even though my family and the Whites were close, Stella and I had barely ever spoken. She could barely string a sentence together, while I could talk for an entire afternoon by myself. Even when I went to her house, she'd always be off by herself reading a book. Occasionally, I'd try to start a conversation, but she would just give a mechanical response or two. Later, I heard she had skipped several grades. When I was in 9th grade, she was already a senior in high school. The next time I saw her, I was with my parents at her birthday party. One look, and I was completely stunned by her. Exquisite features, an extraordinary air about her. A true campus goddess. That day, a lot of rich young masters showed up at her party. They were all around our age. The way they looked at her was so blatant. I remember thinking, Stella sure attracts a lot of attention. I spent the entire party secretly watching her, unable to look at anyone else. I even sketched her in the drawing pad I carried with me. I figured, since our families were friends, it wouldn't be too much to ask for her number. But before I could get close, I was pushed aside by a crowd of guys. Frustrated, I just left the party. I wasn't staying there. After I started college, I heard about Stella's life almost every day. The school forums were full of her achievements. What international award she had won, when her next debate competition was which classmate she was getting close to. It was like a celebrity fan site. There was even a dedicated fan club. I blocked all of it, Other than hearing people brag about her in front of me, I ignored everything else. One day, I went with Ace to the basketball court to watch a girl he liked play. Ace pointed to the most striking player on the court, number 17, and said to me with a sly grin, "You know who that is?" I took one look, thought she was beautiful, and blurted out, "My future wife." Ace burst out laughing. The guys next to us started laughing too. Another one of Stella's wannabe boyfriends. As if anyone can just win over Stella. That's hilarious. That girl was Stella? Ace gave me a meaningful look. Didn't expect that, did you? There's a reason Stella is so famous on the school forums. I glanced at her again, then stubbornly looked away. She's alright, I guess. Even after saying that, I still snuck a couple more glances. That girl hadn't changed a bit since we were kids. Still gorgeous. In fact, she had reached a whole new level of beauty. During halftime, a crowd of guys surrounded Stella. They were all there to offer her water and drinks. Some of them were pretty good looking too. "Here, this is for you." Ace handed me a bottle of water and then rushed off to the girl he liked. The summer air was hot and sticky. I found a shady spot to sit and wait for Ace, twisting open the water bottle to take a sip. The next second, an elegant figure blocked my view. "Got any water?" I looked up. Stella was standing in front of me, her voice unreadable. "This one." I shook the half-empty bottle. Stella suddenly snatched the bottle from my hand and drank from the same spot I had. I had been about to say I'd already drunk from it. "Thanks." For some reason, the sunlight that day was exceptionally bright, and the sound of the cicadas was deafeningly loud. Everything that happened that day is still crystal clear in my mind. The topic of canceling the engagement never came up again, and no one pressured us to set a date. That night, Stella drove me and my parents home. When we got to our front door, we found a large box. "Did you guys buy something? Is it a present for me?" I had joked with them a few days ago that they'd better have a gift ready for me when I got back. My return was so sudden that they hadn't had time to prepare anything. I had been a little disappointed, but now, seeing this big box, I felt much better. For some reason, I had a feeling it was a surprise. "We didn't get you a present." "Who sent it?" I leaned in to look at the sender's name, Stella White. Then I looked back at the person in question. Her face was completely calm. The words "I don't need credit" were practically written on her forehead. "Stella, we were just talking about this. You're not gonna claim it?" Hearing her name, Stella walked over, expertly lifted the box, and carried it inside. "Yeah, I bought it for you." I opened it and saw it was Chris's antique porcelain vase. I was so thrilled I could barely form a coherent sentence. "How did you get this?" "It was Chris's. I've wanted it for so long. I was just trying to figure out how to ask him for it." After a moment, Stella nodded, not really answering the question. My dad laughed and patted Stella's shoulder. "That's very thoughtful of you, Stella." I hugged my precious porcelain vase and quickly placed it in the most prominent spot in the living room. "Isn't it beautiful?" Stella looked at me. Beautiful. That night I couldn't sleep. I called Chris in the middle of the night. "Chris, how did Stella get that porcelain vase? You were practically begging me for it in my comments section. You think Stella didn't see that?" I was confused. "But I don't have Stella's number." Chris sent me a contact. "Here, this one. Look familiar?" I stared at the familiar blue and white profile picture. Holy crap. I do have her number. When did I add her? She never posts anything. I didn't even know she existed on here. You added her before you went abroad. Zach told you to add her burner account. But it was really just Stella's main account. You know how she is, always keeping things under wraps. She even managed to hide the fact she's been in love with you for years. Chris sighed. After that, Stella bought Zach a new car. When am I going to meet someone who's that nice to me and that beautiful? You lucky bastard, go enjoy it. Chris was exhausted and hung up. But I was more awake than ever. Stella had done so much in secret, and I had no idea about any of it. I spent a long time typing and deleting messages in the chat window. Why didn't you tell me you added me? Too aggressive. Delete. Hey, is this Stella? Too boring. Delete. After half an hour, the text box was still empty. Forget it. I tossed my phone aside, lying in bed. For some reason, All I could picture was Stella's cool, hurt expression. I thought to myself, maybe, just maybe, I could try starting something new. The next morning, I was in a great mood and learned how to make soup from our housekeeper. I took it in a thermos to Stella's office. But it turned out Stella had left on a business trip early in the morning and probably wouldn't be back until the afternoon. I didn't have anything else to do, so I had Stella's assistant set me up in a lounge to wait. I'm not sure how long I was there, but I dozed off for a bit and was woken up by hushed voices outside. If it weren't for him, Ms. White wouldn't have fired those longtime employees. I don't see what's so great about him. James, I think you're a much better fit for Ms. White. How could I possibly be worthy of being Stella's boyfriend? Her boyfriend should be as outstanding as she is. Then it should definitely be you. Be more confident. You really are outstanding. I didn't know if they were playing dumb or were actually that clueless. The soundproofing in this lounge was terrible. I could hear every word they said. I rubbed my sleepy eyes and pushed the door open. Do you want to maybe speak a little louder? James's co-workers saw me and scurried away. But James stood his ground in front of me. It looked like he was ready for a fight. Mr. Sterling, I know you're looking for Stella. She's not in the office right now. I leaned back in my chair. That's fine. I'll wait for her here. Mr. Sterling, I know this is out of line, but you and Stella are not a good match. Two people with no feelings for each other getting married will only be torture for both of you. James bit his lip, speaking with righteous indignation. He looked like a knight defending justice, a hero righting wrongs. I smiled. First, if you think what you're about to say is out of line, then don't say it. Second, what goes on between her and me is none of your damn business. And third, Stella and I grew up together. Who's going to believe you when you say there are no feelings between us? James's fists clenched tighter. What will it take for you to leave Stella alone? As he said it, he suddenly raised his hand and slapped himself hard across the face. Twice. A twisted smile spread across his face. Like this? The next second, he staggered out the door, knocking over the hot soup I had brought. My entire morning's effort, wasted. As he ran, his eyes were red and his shoulders were shaking, drawing a crowd of employees. I followed him calmly. This kind of stunt was just pathetic. They were all taking James's side. I ignored them, walked forward, and without hesitation, slapped James twice. You said I hit you, right? This makes it official. James, what's the point of causing a scene at the office? You should call your parents, or whoever the most powerful person you know is, and have them back you up. Even if you come from a powerful family, you still have to be reasonable. Sorry, I was spoiled rotten growing up. I don't know the meaning of reasonable. But I do know that with one phone call, I can make you, and your entire family, disappear from this city. Suddenly, someone in the crowd shouted, Ms. White, you're back. To be honest, for a moment there, I was a little panicked. So many people were on James's side. I hate being framed, and I hate being alone. The threats I made were just bluster. Ultimately, it was all to save face. I still wasn't sure how important James's family was to Stella's company. Or maybe, after all the time he'd spent at the company, James was more important to Stella than I was, someone she hadn't seen in years. I admit I wasn't as confident as I let on. The moment Stella appeared, my bravado started to crumble. She walked right up to me with her long strides. Meeting her gaze, I felt an unexplainable guilt. I said weakly, "Why are you back so soon? They said you wouldn't be back until this afternoon." Stella's gaze shifted from James's face back to me. "They told me you were here looking for me." I was at a loss for words and just managed an, "Oh." Stella frowned at my slightly reddened palm. "Does your hand hurt?" I took her hand. "It's fine." Stella stared at my hand for a few seconds, her brow furrowed, as if she were in more pain than I was. She looked at James without a trace of emotion. "You don't need to come in starting tomorrow." James clutched his cheek, his eyes red. "Stella, why? You saw what happened." Before he could finish, Stella took my hand. "Let me take you home." Sitting in her passenger seat, I asked her, "You didn't even get the full story. You just assumed he framed me? I know you. What if I really did hit him? Then he must have done something to make you angry. He deserved it. You just fired him like that. Won't the rest of the company think you're being unfair? Stella explained patiently. I've been looking for a reason to fire him for a while. But he's an alum from my university and the son of a business partner, so I couldn't find a good reason. But now I have one. So thank you. Stella. You idiot. I cause all this trouble for you and you think I'm helping. After that incident, it felt like Stella and I got closer. Because the White family chef was a better cook, I went over to their house for dinner every few days, sometimes bringing leftovers to the office for Stella. After the James incident, the whole company's attitude toward me did a complete 180. I don't know when it started, but I got used to being Stella's fiancé. Sometimes I'd find a spot in the office to draw for a while and then wait for Stella to get off work so we could go home together. If I was out with Ace and the guys, Stella would come pick me up when it got late. The day we made it official was actually a very ordinary evening. Stella was driving me home as usual. I said to her, you don't have to come pick me up every time. I can get home by myself. She said, I know your parents have always doted on you. They would drop everything to pick you up anytime, anywhere. I will too. I won't let you be alone. I watched the cars speeding by outside the window and said slowly, Stella, back when I was a senior in high school, I secretly tried to find you once. I slipped a love letter into your locker. But later, I got scared it would make things awkward between us. So I lied and said it was for another girl and I'd put it in the wrong spot. I was worried the letter would make it so we couldn't even be friends. It seemed better to just get by on our childhood friend status. Stella, I have a lot of flaws. I'll probably cause you a ton of trouble. The car stopped in front of my art studio. Stella said, Martin, I'm in love with you. I don't know how Stella and I ended up kissing. Unlike last time's brief, gentle touch, this kiss was deeper, more forceful. It left me breathless several times. To make me more comfortable, Stella supported my waist with one hand and slowly reclined the seat. A more aggressive kiss swept over me. Stella, maybe we should go upstairs. Stella was panting. She grabbed my wandering hand, her voice hoarse. Martin, not here. She forced the words out one by one, her tone laced with restraint. I suddenly laughed out loud. It was the first time I'd ever seen Stella so flustered. Stella still let me go. To be honest, I didn't really want to leave. In college, I had secretly collected some of Stella's professional photos. They were, to put it mildly, stunning. I wondered if they still existed after all this time. I thought to myself, one day, I'd have to see for myself. I didn't rush back to the studio. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't calm down, so I wandered around outside for a long time. I even had to tell a passing dog that I was in a relationship now. When I'd wandered enough, I went back to the studio, pushed the door open, and saw my parents standing in the living room. Their eyes went to my lips. Martin, why are your lips swollen? That night, both of us were interrogated by our families for a long time. The next day, they coordinated to release a story to the press. Huge headlines embellished the love story between me and Stella. I told you there was something between you two. A father's intuition is never wrong. Every time you were near Stella, her eyes were glued to you, just like how your mom used to look at me. Of course, there were also my terrible friends. Every single one of them claimed that keeping Stella's crush a secret was the hardest thing they'd ever done. On our engagement day, they even printed out a bunch of flyers detailing all the time Stella had shown her secret love for me and posted them all over the venue. It made me want to laugh, cry, and get angry all at once. Later, in Stella's room, I found a lot of things related to me, like a high school ID photo of mine that I had lost somewhere. A picture of me accepting an award when I won a painting competition. A matching version of the little raccoon keychain I always used to have on my backpack in high school. I hugged Stella and asked her, if my dad hadn't agreed to the engagement, were you really planning on wasting your whole life waiting for me? She hugged me back and gently stroked my hair. It's not about wasting time. Love and marriage are not necessities. For me, whether or not I get married isn't important. What's important is you. I'm not in a hurry. I can wait. Everyone loves differently. When love arrives, some people may seem calm on the surface, but inside, a storm is raging. She wasn't good with words, didn't know how to express herself, but she knew how to love you better than anyone. I've learned that love isn't about all the noise and drama on the surface. It's about loving someone in the quiet places,